My mommy is tied to a rock in the hot sun. Please help her." Rancher untied the Apache widow's ropes. The sun was high in the sky, beating down on the dry, dusty plains where the grass was brown and brittle, and the heat shimmered off the earth in wavering waves. The wind was hot and rough, carrying the scent of dust and the faint smell of distant pine trees. It was the kind of day that made people move slowly, sweat dripping down their faces, and animals hide in the shade. But for one little Apache child, there was no time to rest, no time to hide, no time to think about the heat. Her mother was in danger, and she had to act fast. The girl ran as fast as she could, her small feet kicking up clouds of dust, her heart pounding so loudly she thought it might burst. Her chest heaved, her throat was dry, and her eyes stung from the dirt carried by the wind, but she didn't stop. Every step she took brought her closer to hope, and she repeated a single desperate thought in her mind. "I have to save Mommy. I have to save Mommy." Her mother, a widow who had been struggling to survive on her own after losing her husband, had been captured by a group that meant to harm her. They had tied her to a rock in the blazing sun, leaving her helpless, and the child had witnessed it. She had hidden behind a small grove of scrubby trees, trying to stay quiet while the sun burned her back and sweat soaked her clothes. The sight of her mother, terrified and struggling, had shaken her to her very core. She knew she couldn't wait for someone else to come by. She had to find help herself. After what felt like hours of running, though it had only been minutes, she spotted a distant building, a small ranch house with a wooden fence, horses grazing nearby, and a faint wisp of smoke rising from a chimney. Relief surged through her chest like a sudden wave. She sprinted faster now, almost tripping over rocks and dried branches. But she didn't care. She needed help, and this was her only chance. She reached the edge of the ranch, gasping for breath, tears streaming down her dusty cheeks. Her small hands shook as she clutched the hem of her dress, her eyes scanning the yard for anyone who could listen to her, anyone who could act. That's when she saw him. A tall man with weathered skin, strong arms, and careful eyes, standing near the stable, brushing down a horse. He looked like someone who had spent his whole life working with animals and the land, someone who had seen hard days and knew how to handle difficult situations. The girl ran toward him, shouting as loud as her small voice could manage. "Please, please help! My mommy! They tied her to a rock in the sun. Please help her." She stopped a few feet away, panting heavily, her small chest rising and falling. She didn't know if he could understand, didn't know if he would believe her, but she had to try. The rancher turned toward her, his eyes narrowing as he took in her disheveled appearance, the desperation in her eyes, and the urgency in her voice. He stepped closer, kneeling slightly so that he could look her in the eye. "Slow down, little one," he said in a calm, steady voice. "Tell me what happened. Where is your mother?" The child's words tumbled out in a rush, almost incoherent from fear and exhaustion. They tied her to a rock, the hot sun. She's scared. Please, I don't know what to do." "Please help her." She dropped to her knees, trembling, tears pouring freely. "I can't leave her." "But I can't." The rancher listened carefully, his mind racing but his expression calm. He had faced dangers before, storms, wild animals, accidents, but he had never encountered such raw fear, such urgent desperation from a child. He could see the truth in her eyes, the way her tiny hands shook, the way she struggled to catch her breath between words. He knew this was no exaggeration. Something serious was happening, and it needed immediate attention. "All right," he said gently but firmly. "I understand. We'll help her. Show me where." The child nodded frantically, her small fingers pointing toward the distant rocks on the horizon where she had left her mother. She tried to stand, but her legs were wobbly, weak from running and crying. The rancher reached out, supporting her carefully, and helped her mount a horse that had been calmly watching the scene. He handed her the reins, though she was too small to control it fully, and guided the horse himself, moving quickly across the plain. As they rode, the child kept glancing back toward the rocks, her heart pounding with fear. "What if they hurt her before we get there?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "What if it's too late?" The rancher's voice was steady, reassuring.
"We'll get there. We have to."
"We're going to help her. You've done the right thing by coming for help." He kept his eyes on the horizon, scanning for any signs of the captors. The land stretched endlessly, the sun blazing overhead, the wind whipping against their faces. Every second felt like an eternity, every step of the horse bringing them closer to danger but also closer to hope. The girl's mind raced with memories of her mother, her gentle hands, the warmth of her hugs, the soft voice that sang to her at night. She remembered the times they had laughed together, shared small meals, and cared for each other when life was harsh and unforgiving. She could not let her mother suffer under that hot sun, not when she could do something about it. The rancher guided her horse carefully over rocky patches, around dry bushes, and past small gullies, making sure they didn't slow down too much. He was experienced, knowing when to push the animal and when to give it a moment's rest. All the while he kept speaking to the child, keeping her focused, keeping her hope alive.
"We're almost there. Stay with me."
"Keep your eyes forward. We can do this together." Finally, they reached a low rise from which the child could see her mother tied to a flat, sun-baked rock. The widow struggled against the ropes, her clothes sticking to her sweat-soaked skin, her face contorted with pain and fear. The sight made the child's heart ache, and she let out a sob, her small hands clutching the reins tightly. "Mommy," she cried, I'm here to help." The rancher guided the horse closer but kept a safe distance, assessing the situation. The captors were nearby, watching silently, perhaps unaware that the rancher had arrived or that the child had brought help. The widow saw them and tried to call out, but her voice was weak from exhaustion and fear. The rancher dismounted, speaking calmly but firmly. "Don't worry. I'm here to help. We'll get you out of this." The widow's eyes filled with tears of relief, and she nodded slightly, trying to smile through her pain. The child's small hand reached out toward her mother, and the mother tried to wave her hand, though the ropes made movement difficult. The rancher moved carefully, positioning himself between the widow and any potential threat, preparing to untie her while staying alert to danger. The heat of the sun beat down mercilessly, but the rancher focused only on the rescue. He could feel the sweat running down his back, his clothes sticking to him, his throat dry, but he ignored it. The child's desperate plea, the mother's suffering, and the urgency of the situation gave him strength. He thought about all the times he had relied on his experience, all the years he had spent surviving tough conditions, and he knew he could do this. He had to. The child watched anxiously as the rancher approached her mother, holding the ropes and planning carefully. Every second seemed like an hour, every movement critical. The widow tried to steady her breathing, her body trembling from the heat and fear, but there was a flicker of hope in her eyes now. She saw that help had arrived, and that alone gave her a small measure of comfort. The rancher knelt next to the rock, his hands moving carefully to loosen the ropes without causing pain. The child stayed close, whispering words of encouragement to her mother. The widow felt the ropes give a little, felt the pressure on her wrists ease, and a wave of relief washed over her. She had been trapped, helpless and terrified, but now someone was here to protect her. This was just the beginning. The danger was still real, the sun still hot, and the journey to safety was not over. But the first step had been taken. The little girl's bravery in seeking help, the widow's endurance, and the rancher's courage were all coming together in a delicate balance of hope and determination. Together, they would face whatever came next. And in that moment, with the wind blowing through the dry grass, the horses watching quietly, and the sun glaring down, there was a sense of possibility, a sense that courage, love, and compassion could overcome even the harshest of circumstances. The rancher could see the worry and fear in the little girl's eyes, and he knew time was critical. The sun still blazed overhead, making the rocks and dirt shimmer with heat. Sweat ran down his face, stinging his eyes, but he ignored it. Every second counted. He had to get the widow untied and to safety before the sun, the harsh terrain, or the captors could make the situation worse. He spoke softly to the child, trying to keep her calm while making a plan. "We need to move carefully," he said. "I will untie your mother first, and then we will get her out of the sun. Stay close, but don't get in the way." The child nodded, gripping the reins of the horse tightly, trying to stay brave, though her small body shook with fear. She kept glancing at her mother, who was tied to the rock, her face showing exhaustion, pain, and relief all at once. The rancher began moving closer, carefully assessing the terrain. The rocks were uneven and sharp, the ground hard and unyielding, and the heat radiated up from every surface. He had learned in his years on the ranch how to handle difficult landscapes, but this was different. There was danger in the distance, and his every move needed to be calculated. The captors were still nearby, keeping watch but not making a move, so he had a small window to act. As he approached the widow, he noticed the ropes were tight and old, digging into her wrists and ankles. He knelt down beside her and spoke in a gentle, calming voice. "I'm here now. I'm going to get you out of this." She tried to speak, but her throat was dry, and her voice came out as a whisper. "Thank you," she said weakly. Her eyes glistened with tears, both from relief and pain. The rancher worked quickly but carefully, loosening the knots and sliding the ropes off her arms and legs. Each second was tense. He could feel the weight of the child's hope, the widow's fear, and the harshness of the environment pressing down on him. Finally, the ropes were removed. The widow rubbed her sore wrists and looked at the rancher with gratitude she could not fully express. Her body trembled from the heat and the fear she had endured, but now she was free. The child ran to her mother and threw her arms around her, sobbing in relief.
"Mommy, I told you I would find help."
"I told you." The mother hugged her back tightly, trying to hold back her own tears. "Thank you, my brave one," she whispered. "Thank you for not giving up." The rancher stood nearby, offering them both water from his canteen and a small cloth to wipe away the sweat and dust. Once the widow was slightly recovered, the rancher began thinking about the next steps. The captors were still nearby, though they had not approached since the rancher's arrival. He needed to get the widow and child to safety quickly, but also without drawing attention. He scanned the landscape, noticing a line of trees in the distance that could provide shade and cover. There was also a narrow path leading down a small ravine hidden from sight, which would allow them to move without being easily seen. The rancher motioned for the widow and child to follow him. "We need to move slowly and carefully," he said. "Stay close to me, and don't make sudden noises." The child nodded and held her mother's hand, both of them trusting the rancher completely. Together, the three of them started toward the narrow path, the rancher leading, keeping a watchful eye on their surroundings. The widow stumbled slightly on the uneven ground, her legs weak from standing tied in the hot sun. The rancher reached out to steady her, speaking calmly. Take it slow. You're safe now, but we need to be careful until we reach the shade." The child kept close, her small hand gripping her mother's, her eyes scanning for any sign of danger. Though they were moving carefully, the heat still pressed down on them, and every step was exhausting. As they moved, the rancher thought about the child's courage. She had run across the hot plains, alone and terrified, to find help. Her bravery had saved her mother's life. He silently admired her determination and hoped to encourage it in small ways. "You've done something very brave today," he said softly. The child looked up at him, her eyes wide. "I just wanted to save Mommy," she whispered. "That's all that mattered." The rancher smiled gently. "And because of that, she's safe now. You helped make that happen." His words seemed to give the child strength. She held her mother's hand a little tighter and walked with more confidence, though her legs were tired and sore. They reached the narrow path the rancher had spotted earlier. It was rocky and uneven, but hidden from view, providing some cover from the captors. The widow leaned on the rancher as they descended, and the child followed closely. The shade of the trees ahead promised some relief from the relentless sun. Birds chirped in the distance, and a faint breeze offered a small comfort. Even though they were moving carefully, the rancher stayed alert. He knew that danger could return at any moment, and he had to keep the family safe. His years on the ranch had taught him to read the land, to notice small signs, a broken branch, a footprint, the sound of movement in the distance. He used these skills now, watching and listening as they moved forward. Once they reached the shade of the trees, the widow finally sat down on a fallen log, exhausted but relieved. The child collapsed beside her, leaning against her mother's side. The rancher handed them more water and encouraged them to rest, even for a short while. "We're safer now," he said. "Take a moment to catch your breath. We still have a journey ahead, but we'll manage it together." The widow looked at the rancher with gratitude that words could not fully capture. She had endured fear, pain, and the burning sun, but now she was free. "I don't know how to thank you," she said quietly.
You saved my life and my child's too. The rancher shook his head. "You don't need to thank me."
"I did what I had to do. You were brave enough to get help, and that's what matters." The child looked up at her mother and the rancher, her small face shining with relief. "I just wanted us to be together," she said. "I didn't want anything bad to happen to you." Her mother held her tightly, stroking her hair. "You did well, my little one. You were very brave." After a short rest, the rancher began planning the next part of their journey. He knew they could not stay in one place for long. The captors might realize what had happened and could come searching for them. They needed to reach a safe area, somewhere the child and widow could recover without fear. The rancher thought of his ranch home, a place with walls, water, and food. Somewhere the widow and child could finally rest without danger. He helped them up and guided them toward the path leading back to the ranch. The widow's steps were still unsteady, but with the rancher's support and the child holding her hand, they moved steadily. The child's small voice asked questions along the way, her curiosity mixed with lingering fear. "Are they going to find us?" she whispered. The rancher responded gently, "We'll make sure they don't. Just stay close to me and keep moving forward." The sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the plains. The temperature was still high, but the worst of the heat was starting to ease. The family pressed on, step by step, toward safety. The rancher knew that every mile they traveled brought them closer to relief and security. and he kept his focus on guiding them carefully and quietly. As they neared the ranch house, the child's excitement grew. "Is that it? Is that where we live now?" she asked, pointing to the familiar building in the distance. The rancher smiled. "Yes, we'll be safe there. You'll finally get some rest and your mother can recover." The widow glanced at the rancher with a mix of relief and gratitude. She had faced terror under the hot sun, tired and helpless. But now she had survived. She could finally breathe again, free from ropes and fear. "Thank you," she whispered once more, her voice steadying. "You gave us a chance to live." The rancher nodded. "Let's keep moving. We're almost there. You're both safe now, but we'll be completely safe soon." With the rancher leading, the child holding her mother's hand, and the widow leaning on both of them for support, they finally crossed the last stretch of land to the ranch house. Horses in the yard watched silently as the trio approached, and the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the plains in shades of orange and gold. Relief filled the air, and for the first time since the ordeal began, the family could imagine a moment of peace. The rancher, the widow, and the child were finally within sight of the ranch house, but the tension in the air did not ease. The plains were still open, and though the sun had begun its slow descent, the shadows it cast were long and distorted, creating shapes that made the child jump nervously. Every rustle of grass, every small movement of a bird, seemed magnified in the quiet evening. The widow's relief was tempered by lingering fear. What if the captors had followed them? What if danger still waited around the next corner? The rancher moved cautiously, his eyes scanning the horizon, taking note of any footprints, broken branches, or disturbances in the dust that might reveal unwanted watchers. He had been on the plains for decades, learning to read the land like a book. He could tell when animals had passed by, when someone had disturbed the earth, or when the wind had shifted signs of movement. Right now, all his experience was focused on keeping this small family safe. The child clung to her mother's hand, feeling the uneven ground beneath her small feet. Her energy was waning, but she refused to let go. She had been brave enough to run across the hot plains to seek help, and she would stay brave now. Her mother's arm draped around her shoulder, a quiet reminder that she was not alone, that they were together. And beside them, the rancher moved with a calm and steady presence, guiding them carefully. As they neared a small rise in the land, the rancher motioned for them to pause. He dropped to one knee, whispering to the widow and the child, "We need to be careful here. There might still be people watching. We can't take chances now." The widow nodded, understanding the caution in his tone. Her mind still raced with memories of the ropes, the sun, the helplessness she had felt moments ago. But now, with the rancher's steady hands leading the way, and her child beside her, she found the courage to move forward. The rancher surveyed the area in front of them. There was a narrow, shallow gully leading down toward the ranch house. It was partially hidden by rocks and bushes, providing some cover from the open plains. "This will help us stay out of sight," he said. "Follow me, and don't make sudden movements." The widow and child nodded, gripping each other's hands tightly. Step by step, they descended into the gully, the dry rocks crunching softly underfoot. Even with the gully providing some concealment, every movement was tense. The child's eyes darted around, watching for anything unusual. Her small body was still trembling from the fear of earlier events. She kept thinking about the sun, the ropes, her mother's struggle, and the feeling of helplessness she had experienced. But she also felt a spark of hope. They were so close to safety now. She could almost feel the cool shade of the ranch house, the smell of food, the warmth of a roof above her head. The widow leaned heavily on the rancher's shoulder, grateful for his strength and guidance. She had endured so much in the sun, tide, and vulnerable, that every step now felt both liberating and exhausting.
"Thank you for saving us," she whispered quietly.
The rancher shook his head, speaking gently. "You don't need to thank me. I'm just making sure you both get to safety." He glanced over his shoulder, keeping watch. "But you were brave to get help."
Your courage made this possible." They continued along the gully, moving slowly and deliberately.
The rancher occasionally paused, listening to the wind and the rustle of the grass. He taught the child to notice the small things, quietly showing her how to watch for signs of danger without panic. "See the footprints there?" he said softly. "They're old. No one is coming right now, but we stay alert just in case." The child nodded, trying to focus on his words instead of the fear building in her chest. As they moved, the rancher noticed a small patch of shade cast by a group of rocks. It was barely enough to provide relief from the sun, but it was something. He guided the widow and child to sit for a few moments. He handed them each a sip of water from his canteen. The child drank greedily, then wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Her mother rested her head against a rock, closing her eyes for just a moment, gathering strength for the rest of the journey. The rancher used this brief pause to assess their surroundings. The captors were not in sight, but he could not be certain they were gone. The child looked up at him, curiosity and worry mixing in her eyes. "Do you think they're still looking for us?" she asked in a small voice. He smiled reassuringly. "They might be, but we're smart. We're moving quietly, staying hidden, and we have a plan. We'll get you to safety, I promise." After the brief rest, they continued toward the ranch. The path became narrower, rocks pressing on both sides, but it offered excellent cover. The rancher led the way, stepping carefully to avoid making noise. The child followed closely, her small hand still holding her mother's. Every movement was a lesson in patience and caution. The widow, though exhausted, matched their pace, trusting completely in the rancher's judgment. As they emerged from the narrow path, the ranch house came fully into view. The horses in the yard lifted their heads, curious but calm. Smoke rose from the chimney, a sign that someone was home, or that the rancher had left a fire burning for warmth and comfort. The rancher felt a sense of relief. They were close to safety now, and though the journey was not over, the worst seemed behind them. The child's excitement bubbled over. "We're almost there, Mommy." "We're going to be safe," she said, her voice trembling with relief. Her mother smiled weakly, brushing a strand of hair from her child's face. "Yes, we're almost there. Thank you for being so brave," she said softly. The rancher remained vigilant, scanning the open area between the rocks and the ranch house, making sure no danger was near. Finally, they crossed the last stretch of open ground. The rancher took the lead, keeping the widow close, with the child following. They reached the steps of the ranch house, where the rancher helped the widow inside, making sure she was steady and unharmed. The child ran ahead to the interior, glancing back to make sure her mother had safely followed. The warmth of the house, the solid walls, and the shade offered a comfort they had not felt since the ordeal began. Inside the ranch, the widow sank into a chair, exhausted, but safe at last. The child climbed onto the floor, hugging her mother's leg, her tears drying in the soft light of the house. The rancher handed them water in a small cloth to wipe away the sweat and dust. The widow looked around, realizing for the first time in hours that they were completely out of the sun, completely out of danger, for now. The rancher took a moment to catch his own breath. He had been tense the entire way, every sense alert to the possibility of danger. But now, seeing the widow and child safe, he allowed himself a small moment of relief. He could feel the tightness in his shoulders easing, the pounding of his heart slowing. Yet he knew their journey was not over. They would need to recover fully, rest, and plan for the days ahead. The widow, still catching her breath, looked at the rancher with gratitude that words could not express. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. "You risked so much for us." He shook his head gently. "I did what I had to do. You were brave to get help, and that's what kept you alive. That courage is what saved you both." The child smiled weakly, exhausted but happy. "I just wanted Mommy to be safe," she said. Her mother hugged her tightly, feeling the warmth and bravery of her little girl. "And now we are," she said. "Thanks to all of you." The rancher nodded. "We still have work to do. We'll make sure you're safe and taken care of completely." Outside, the sun dipped lower, casting long, golden shadows across the ranch. Inside, the family began to relax for the first time in hours, feeling a sense of safety and relief that had seemed impossible just a short while ago. The rancher quietly planned the next steps: food, rest, protection. But for now, the immediate danger had passed. In that quiet moment, the child leaned against her mother. The widow sat with relief washing over her, and the rancher stood watchfully nearby. Though the plains outside were still vast and potentially dangerous, inside the ranch house they had found a temporary haven. It was a place to recover, to breathe, and to prepare for the next chapter of their journey, a chapter that would be filled with hope, courage, and new beginnings. The widow sat on a wooden bench inside the ranch, her hands still trembling from the ordeal she had endured under the scorching sun. Her body ached from the tight ropes that had bound her wrists and ankles, and her skin felt raw from the heat. The child sat close to her, her small arms wrapped around her mother's waist, trying to offer comfort, though she herself was exhausted and shaken. The rancher moved quietly around the room, gathering water, a clean cloth, and a small blanket to help the widow recover. "Here," he said gently, offering the water. "Take small sips. You've been through a lot, and your body needs to rehydrate." The widow nodded, her lips trembling as she accepted the water. Each sip was a relief, soothing her parched throat, and she could feel the cool liquid calming her burning mouth and throat. The child watched anxiously, still worried about her mother, but she began to feel a small sense of hope. For the first time since the sun had tied her mother to the rock, they were safe. The rancher knelt in front of the widow, gently examining her wrists and ankles for any signs of serious injury. The ropes had left red marks, and her skin was tender, but there were no broken bones or deep cuts. "You're strong," he said softly. "The ropes hurt, but I think you'll be okay with some rest. We'll take care of you." The widow's eyes filled with tears of relief, and she whispered, I thought I might never see my child again." Her voice faltered, and the child hugged her tighter. "I'm here now, Mommy." "We're okay," she said quietly, trying to sound braver than she felt. Once the widow had a moment to rest, the rancher began to explain what had happened outside. "I had to make sure the captors weren't nearby," he said carefully. "I came quietly, moved slowly, and watched their movements. Once I was certain they weren't going to harm you immediately, I untied the ropes and got you to the shade. Then we followed the hidden path to the ranch." The widow listened closely, her gratitude growing with every word. She could feel the weight of her fear lifting slightly, replaced by a sense of safety and relief. The child asked questions, her voice small but curious. "Were they going to hurt us?" she asked. "I didn't want them to. I just wanted you to be safe." The rancher smiled gently, kneeling beside her. "You did the right thing by running for help. That bravery gave your mother a chance to live. And now we are here, and we'll make sure you're both safe." The child's eyes widened with a mixture of pride and relief. She had been scared, exhausted, and alone in her fear, but she had helped save her mother. The rancher then guided the widow and child to a corner of the ranch house where there was a clean, soft blanket and a small water basin. He helped the widow sit comfortably, letting her rest while the child explored the small, safe space around them. The rancher knew that after such an ordeal, the mind and body needed time to recover. He also knew that he could not let his guard down entirely. Even though the captors were likely far behind by now, he remained watchful, alert to any unexpected sounds or movements outside the ranch. The widow, feeling some strength returning, began to speak quietly about her experience. "I don't know why they did it," she said softly. "I was alone, and I had nothing to give them. Nothing but myself to protect my child. I didn't think anyone would come." The rancher listened patiently. "You survived because you were brave and because your child acted quickly. Courage sometimes comes from the smallest hearts," he said gently. The widow nodded, tears streaming again, but this time they were tears of relief and gratitude rather than fear. After a short while, the rancher guided them to a table where he had prepared a small meal. It wasn't much, bread, fresh water, and some dried fruit, but it was nourishing. "Eat slowly," he instructed. "Your bodies need energy to recover." The widow smiled faintly, grateful for the kindness, and began to eat with the child. The child's face brightened, and she carefully fed herself small bites, still holding her mother's hand with her free one. Once they had eaten and rested, the rancher began to talk about the next steps. "We will stay here tonight," he said. "Tomorrow we'll make sure you have everything you need to stay safe. For now, the most important thing is rest and recovery." The widow nodded, understanding the wisdom in his words. Her mind had been filled with fear and uncertainty for so long that the idea of safety, even for a single night, was comforting. As the sun sank lower outside, painting the ranch in warm golden light, the rancher and the widow shared quiet moments with the child. The little girl played softly near her mother, picking up small objects and exploring the safe space around her. Her laughter, though small and hesitant, brought a sense of normalcy back to the house, a reminder that even after fear and danger, life could return to calm and comfort. The rancher took a moment to step outside and check the perimeter of the ranch. He walked slowly, scanning the horizon, making sure no one was following. The plains were quiet now, and the wind carried the soft scent of evening grass. It was peaceful, and he felt a small sense of relief that the immediate danger had passed. He returned inside, satisfied that the widow and child were safe for the night. Back inside, the widow held her child close, speaking softly. "You were so brave today. You ran through the hot sun and found help when no one else could. You saved our lives." The child smiled faintly, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. "I just wanted us to be safe," she whispered. Her mother hugged her tightly. "And now we are, thanks to you and the rancher." The rancher sat nearby, quietly watching them, his heart warmed by the bond between mother and child. He had seen fear, desperation, and courage today, all in its rawest forms. He had helped rescue a family from danger, but he also knew that trust and human connection were just as important as physical protection. By helping them, he had given them not just safety, but hope and a reminder of kindness in the world. Night fell over the ranch, bringing cooler air and the soft sounds of nocturnal animals. The widow and child curled up under the blanket, exhausted but finally safe. The rancher remained alert, keeping watch. But he allowed himself to relax slightly, knowing they were out of immediate danger. For the first time in hours, the house was quiet, filled only with the gentle breathing of those who had survived fear and uncertainty. Before resting, the rancher spoke gently to the widow and child. "Tomorrow we will make sure you have everything you need, food, water, and protection. But tonight, rest. You've been through enough for one day." The widow nodded, tears of gratitude shining in her eyes. The child snuggled close, whispering, thank you for saving us." The rancher smiled quietly, his heart full. "You're welcome," he said softly. "You were brave, and that courage saved you both." As the night deepened, the rancher reflected on the day's events. The child's bravery, the widow's endurance, and the courage it took to face fear head-on were remarkable. The experience had been terrifying and exhausting, but it also reminded him of the strength that existed in ordinary people, even in the harshest conditions, even under the hottest sun and the most dangerous circumstances. Hope, bravery, and kindness could prevail. Inside the ranch, the widow and child slept for the first time in hours without fear. The rancher remained awake for a while longer, thinking about the challenges they had overcome and the future that awaited them. He felt a quiet sense of satisfaction knowing that he had helped protect innocent lives and given them a chance to recover and rebuild. The plains outside were calm now, and for a moment the world seemed safe and gentle. Morning would bring new challenges, of course, but for now, the rescue was complete. The widow and child were alive, together, and safe under the rancher's care. The ropes had been removed, the immediate danger had passed, and the small family could begin to heal from the trauma they had endured. The rancher knew that kindness, courage, and careful planning had made this possible. As the stars faded and the first light of dawn touched the ranch, the widow stirred, feeling strength returning to her body. The child yawned and stretched, her small hand reaching for her mother. The rancher prepared breakfast and water, quietly ensuring they would start the new day nourished and ready. For the first time in what felt like forever, they could breathe without fear, laugh without worry, and imagine a life beyond the trauma of the past hours. The rancher quietly observed them, feeling a sense of peace. The rescue had been difficult, tense, and exhausting, but it had succeeded. The widow's safety and the child's courage were reminders that even in the darkest moments, help could arrive, hope could endure, and lives could be saved. And as the sun rose fully over the plains, it shone on a small family who had faced fear, survived danger, and now, finally, could begin to heal. The sun rose slowly over the ranch, spilling warm light across the wooden fences and dry plains. Inside the small house, the widow and her child were already awake, though still tired from the previous day's ordeal. The child's hair was messy and her small hands were still calloused from running across the hot, dusty plains, but she was smiling now, a quiet, happy smile. Her mother sat beside her, rubbing her child's back gently, feeling a sense of relief she hadn't known in a long time. The rancher had already begun preparing breakfast, quietly moving around the kitchen. The smell of fresh bread and warm water filled the house, a comforting change from the harsh sun and dusty plains. He placed small plates in front of the mother and child, offering them food and encouragement. "Eat slowly," he said. "Your bodies need strength after what you went through yesterday." The widow nodded, her hands slightly shaking as she took the bread. The child giggled quietly, dipping her hand into a small bowl of water to moisten the bread before taking a bite. Once they had eaten, the widow spoke softly, her voice filled with gratitude. "I can't thank you enough," she said, looking at the rancher. "You saved us, both of us. You risked your safety to help complete strangers. And you gave us a chance to live." The rancher shook his head gently. "I did what anyone should do," he said. "I just happened to be here when you needed help. Your courage and your child's bravery made all the difference." The widow's eyes glistened with tears, and the child reached out to hold the rancher's hand, a small, silent gesture of thanks. After breakfast, the rancher guided the widow and child outside. The plains were wide and quiet, the morning air cool compared to the previous day's heat. The horses grazed lazily, watching the humans with calm eyes. The rancher showed them a small area near the house, where they could rest safely, protected from both the sun and any potential dangers that might return. He also pointed out a well where they could get clean water whenever they needed it. The widow looked around, feeling a sense of security she hadn't felt in a long time. "I don't know how we'll ever repay you," she said quietly. "We lost so much, and now we have safety, food, water, and hope." The rancher smiled. "You don't need to repay me," he said. "Just take care of each other and remember what courage and determination can do. That's more than enough." The child ran ahead to a small grove of trees near the ranch, laughing softly as she chased the shadows created by the morning sun. Her mother followed slowly, still sore but moving with determination. The rancher stayed close, keeping watch, knowing that even though the immediate danger was gone, it was important to remain vigilant. For the first time in what felt like forever, the widow and child could feel a sense of peace, a feeling that life might return to normal, at least for a while. Throughout the morning, the rancher taught the child small skills that could help her in the future: how to notice changes in the land, how to watch for signs of animals, and simple ways to stay safe when traveling. The child listened eagerly, absorbing every word. Her mother watched with pride, realizing that even after the fear and danger, her daughter was growing stronger and wiser. Together, they began to rebuild a sense of normal life, one small step at a time. The widow also began to regain her strength. She helped the rancher with small chores around the house, sweeping the floor and tending to the small garden. Each action, though simple, gave her a sense of purpose and control over her life again. She had felt powerless yesterday, tied and exposed to the harsh sun, but today she was active, moving with her child beside her, regaining her confidence one task at a time. As the day progressed, the rancher spoke to the widow about long-term safety. "We'll make sure you have shelter and food for as long as you need," he said. "You don't have to worry about the captors anymore. We'll plan carefully, and you'll be safe here." The widow's eyes filled with gratitude. "You have given us more than life," she said softly. "You have given us hope, and that is something we can never repay." The child, curious and full of energy, began asking questions about the ranch, how the horses were cared for, how the plants grew, and how the rancher managed the wide open land. The rancher patiently explained, showing her small techniques for feeding the animals and watering the garden. He encouraged her curiosity, knowing that learning and exploring were important parts of healing after fear and trauma. The child's laughter and questions brought a lightness to the day, a small sign that normalcy and joy were returning. By mid-afternoon, the widow and child rested under the shade of a large tree, the breeze cooling their skin after the hot morning sun. The rancher sat nearby, watching them, reflecting on the events of the previous day. He thought about the bravery of the child, the endurance of the widow, and the dangers they had faced. He realized that helping them had been more than a rescue. It had been a reminder of the power of courage, kindness, and human connection. The widow reached over to hold her child's hand, her eyes filled with love and pride. "You were so brave yesterday," she said softly. "You ran across the plains in the heat, all alone, to find help. You saved our lives." The child smiled, blushing slightly. "I just wanted us to be safe," she said. "I didn't want anything bad to happen to you." Her mother hugged her tightly. "And now we are," she said. "Thanks to you, and thanks to the rancher." As the evening approached, The rancher prepared a small fire for warmth and to cook a proper meal. The smell of cooking food filled the air, and the widow and child watched eagerly. The day had been long, but it was ending with comfort, nourishment, and safety. For the first time since the ordeal began, the family could truly relax. They ate together, sharing quiet conversation and smiles, letting the day's tension and fear gradually fade. After the meal, the rancher helped the widow and child settle for the night. The blanket was spread on the floor, the water basin nearby, and the small room prepared for a calm and peaceful sleep. The child hugged her mother tightly, feeling safe and protected. The widow closed her eyes, her body finally able to rest, and for the first time in hours, fear no longer dominated her mind. Before leaving them to sleep, the rancher spoke softly. "You are safe now."
We've made sure of that. Rest, recover, and tomorrow we'll plan the next steps to make sure you stay safe.
"You've been through so much, but courage, love, and hope will guide you forward." The widow whispered her thanks again, tears of gratitude streaming down her face. The child nestled against her mother, feeling comforted and protected. The night passed quietly. The widow and child slept without fear, their breathing steady and calm. Outside, the plains were silent, and the ranch was peaceful. The rancher remained vigilant for a while, but even he felt a sense of relief. The rescue was complete, the family was safe, and a new day of healing and hope awaited them. Morning came again, bright and warm. The widow and child awoke, feeling stronger, rested, and ready to face the future. The rancher had prepared breakfast, and the atmosphere in the house was light and filled with a sense of security. The child ran excitedly to explore the ranch again, her laughter echoing through the air. The widow smiled, feeling a weight lifted from her heart. For the first time since the sun had burned down on the rock where she had been tied, she could breathe freely. As they sat together, the widow spoke quietly to the rancher. "You saved our lives, and you've given us hope. I will never forget your kindness. You didn't just rescue us. You helped us find courage and strength we didn't know we had." The rancher smiled gently. "You didn't need saving. You survived because of your bravery and your love for your child. I only guided you to safety." The widow nodded, tears in her eyes, feeling gratitude deeper than words could express. The child, sitting beside her mother, looked up at the rancher. "Will we always be safe here?" she asked, her voice filled with curiosity and hope. The rancher nodded. "Yes, you'll be safe, and you'll have everything you need: food, water, and protection. You can grow strong here." The child smiled brightly, feeling the warmth of security for the first time since the danger began. The widow hugged her child tightly, whispering, "We are safe, we are together, and we will be okay." The child hugged her mother back, her small arms holding on tightly. The rancher watched them, feeling a quiet satisfaction. The family had survived fear, hardship, and danger, and now they could begin the slow, steady process of healing and rebuilding their lives. As the day progressed, the widow and child explored more of the ranch, learning to care for the animals, tending to small plants, and discovering the small joys of life away from fear. The rancher taught them patiently, guiding their hands, answering questions, and encouraging curiosity. Slowly, the shadow of the previous day's trauma began to lift, replaced by hope, resilience, and the simple pleasure of being alive and safe. By the end of the day, the family sat together under the shade of a large tree, the sun dipping low in the sky. The child rested her head on her mother's lap, and the widow's hand gently stroked her hair. The rancher sat nearby, quietly watching over them. For the first time since the terrifying events had begun, the family felt whole again, connected, and free from fear. The widow whispered softly, "Thank you for everything. You gave us a second chance." The rancher shook his head gently. "You had that chance inside of you all along. I just helped guide you to it. Now you can live safely and with hope." The child smiled, a small but genuine smile, feeling the comfort of safety, love, and courage. And as the stars began to appear in the sky, the rancher, the widow, and the child sat together quietly, knowing that the worst was behind them and that life, even after fear, could be full of warmth, love, and possibility. The plains outside were calm, the wind gentle, and the family finally felt at peace.